Hi, I'm Julian Smith,
And I'm Nick Vitacco.
reporting live from Vitacco Studios.
Today we'll be talking about the Middle Ages.
Oh yeah! In European history, the Middle Ages began and ended between the 5th and the 15th century. It began with the fall of the Roman Empire, and then it merged into the Renaissance and the Age of Discovery. Four main things that occurred during this time were the Crusades, the rise of the Roman Catholic Church, the idea of feudalism, and the Black Plague. Right now we're going to be learning a little bit about one of the most horrific, which were the Crusades, featured by myself, Nick Vitacco, Mathew Marchisotta, and Chase Friedman. Towards the end of the 11th century, the Catholic Church began to authorize military expeditions, or crusades, to expel Muslim infidels from the Holy Land. Crusaders wore red crosses on their coats to advertise their status, believed that their service would guarantee the remission of their sins and ensure that they could spend all eternity in heaven. They also received more worldly rewards such as papal protection of property and forgiveness of some kind of loans and payments.
The Crusades began in 1095 when Pope Urban summoned a Christian army to fight its way to Jerusalem and continued on and off until the end of the 15th century. No one won the Crusades. In fact, many thousands of people from both sides lost their lives. They did not make an ordinary Catholics across Christendom feel like they had a common purpose, and they inspired waves of religious enthusiasm among people who may otherwise have felt alienated from the official church. They also exposed crusaders to Islamic literature, science, and technology.
After the fall of Rome, no single state or government united the people who lived on the European continent. Instead, the Catholic Church became the most powerful institution of the medieval period. Kings, queens, and other leaders derived much of their power from their alliances with and protection of the Church.
Ordinary people across Europe had to tithe 10% of their earnings each year to the Church. At the same time, the Church was mostly exempt from taxation. These policies helped it to amass a great deal of money and power.
In medieval Europe, rural life was governed by a system scholars call feudalism. In feudal society, the king granted large pieces of land called fiefs to noblemen and bishops. Landless peasants, known as serfs, did most of the work on the fiefs. They planted and harvested crops and gave most of the produce to the landowners. In exchange for their labor, they were allowed to live on the land. They were also promised protection in case of enemy invasion.
During the 11th century, however, feudal life began to change. Agricultural innovations such as the heavy plow and 3 fields crop rotation made farming more efficient and productive, so fewer farm workers were needed. Thanks to the expanded and improved food supply, the population grew. As a result, more and more people were drawn to towns and cities. Meanwhile, the Crusades had expanded trade routes to the east and given Europeans a taste for imported goods such as wine, olive oil, and luxurious textiles. As the commercial economy developed, port cities in particular thrived. By 1300, there were 15 cities in Europe with a population of more than 50,000.
The Black Death arrived in Europe by sea in October 1347 when 12 trading ships docked at the Sicilian port of Messina after a long journey through the Black Sea. The people who gathered on the docks to greet the ships were met by a horrifying surprise. Most of the sailors aboard the ship were dead, and those who were still alive were gravely ill.
They were overcome with fever, unable to keep food down, and delirious from pain. Strangers of all, they were covered in mysterious black boils that oozed blood and pus and gave their illness its name, the Black Death. The Sicilian authorities hastily ordered the fleet of death ships out of the harbor, but it was too late. Over the next 5 years, the mysterious Black Death would kill more than 20 million people in Europe, almost 1/3 of the continent's population.
Hi, I'm one of the warriors from the first battle of the Crusades with the Christians. One thing I'd like to do is just to give a little credit to the sources that we use for this project. We got one of our sources from the Metz Helium Timeline of Art History. Another website we got it from was the USA.edu. Actually, the article was called Timeline for the Crusades and Christian Holy War. One of our other sources was History.com titled The Middle Ages. Our final source was from Mr. Solomon's lovely PowerPoints that he would always send us. One thing I learned while doing this project is that the Crusades are one of the most brutal parts of the Middle Ages. How do I know? Because I was there.